talks about government doing everything on its own, even though they're not actually doing it. They are open to working with partners, but they're still not kind of, like they're even open, like I said, they did an international tender, so ETS bid, they've selected ETS, but they don't say that in the NEP. So that we thought is a gap. Similarly, if you look at something like assessments like PISA or TIMSS, the NEP does not say, yes, we will do it, it's a good thing. It does not say, no, we will not do it, it's a bad thing. We believe that that kind of a message should be there. So again, you must be aware, India was going to participate in 2021. It got postponed worldwide because of COVID. And then we pulled out in 2022 because what happened was they basically said the results will come too close to the elections. So because there is no clear stand, even now they are saying one of the jobs of Parak is to coordinate India's participation in PISA and TIMSS. So this kind of, sometimes they say it's good, we should do it, sometimes they say no, we should not do it. So that thing we feel that, if NEP clearly says yes, our view would be yes, it's a good thing. It helps us understand how we are doing and keep track and learn from others. If we can do even better, that's good. Like obviously all of us would like that India should be the leader and it's possible, right? In many areas we are getting there. So we believe that the NEP should ideally say yes, India will regularly participate in these. But even if NEP says no, we will not participate because of this, it is fine. But right now the NEP says nothing about it. There is really no mention of it at all. And so on. The technology part of it has focused more on equitable access. For many years now, people have been saying that, like for example, in South Africa, where we work, Mindspark is now being used. They have a concept of zero rating. Zero rating means that an educational site is considered a zero rating site. That means if you go on your phone and you access that site, you can do it without a data plan and it costs you nothing because that site has got permission from government, that access is free. So that is one approach some countries have used. The second approach some countries have used is that any school can go take an internet connection and they will refund based on the number of students. So again, very simple, like you don't have to get any permissions or something, you just take it from the local provider, but it will be refunded to you. And of course, the third option is to actually try and provide internet to all schools, so they have this. But not much mention of these things, not much mention on how will we provide broadband internet to all schools, because that can be a big boost to learning today. So like that, there are certain gaps that are not talked about, but overall we also feel that it's a good document. It kind of emphasizes some of these things. The foundational learning piece we think is good. The assessment reform we think is good. So that's where the NEP is. Organizations like the CBSE, the NCERT have been, they are the ones that are kind of implementing many aspects of this. So yeah, with this I'll just pause for a few minutes. If there are any comments or questions or points you agree on or disagree on or want more clarifications on, happy to discuss that. Yes, please.
Sir.
Please. I do not know, but you just revealed one thing, that ETS has been
yes.
taken as a assessment center. Because we are in touch with ETS always for the TOEFL and SAT
yes.
online exam. But there are also lacuna, let me tell you, because Meritrack has taken ETS from India, Meritrack and then ETS. They are collaborating to do these tests. Do you believe that there are no technical kind of leaders in the country that we should move to ETS for conducting this? First thing, it will be very expensive. Maybe the government will decide, but since you are a part of the committee, maybe you can throw these questions on them. We would like to know that in India, is it not like TCS? Maybe, I don't know, because TCS is also organizing a lot of IIM, our management papers. Now I think our NTA, that test also is being, somebody is doing it. We think that is, I think TCS, no? Yeah, TCS is doing. So is it that TCS not competent, which will be for the Indian assessment? One. And secondly, since NEP will be implemented very shortly, maybe within 2 years or 3 years, in full kind of implementation. Yes. So how government is thinking about training the teachers in the rural areas? When we are talking about a single curriculum for the whole country, how they are really well equipped so that everybody will be benefited by that. Yeah. Because this maximum good brains are there in those areas. We are not able to can nurture them. So how that will be there? And if PISA, It's like nothing is being told, of course. But why don't we think that if PISA will be taken, that should be in all languages? Because we have checked the PISA assessment papers. One question takes half page. So a child will take a lot of time to comprehend, and our children are not ready for that. That is one of the kind of challenge which our students will feel PISA. So at the moment, PISA may not be a good thing for the India to follow, unless whole country, all children will be well equipped with that language competency to understand the question and then answer it.
No, thank you. You asked 3 questions, so I will answer them. I'm going to answer the second question first, and then the first and the third. So your second question was about teacher training, right? So teacher training, I think we all know is critical. In fact, when I say that we are working with the boards, CBSE and ICSE, in the work that we are doing, I think about 60% of it is teacher training. So right now, when I said we have just started to work with ICSE, and even as we speak, there are workshops, there's work going on. That work is training of teachers, training of exam setters, and so on. With the CBSE, in fact, partly because it was COVID time, we actually did it on YouTube, and many of those videos are available on YouTube. It's about how can teachers teach, for competency-based questions, how can they set their own competency-based questions. So I think it is realized. Is it happening adequately? No, I think you're right. So like obviously if you do a YouTube workshop, that's good. I mean, like about 2 lakh teachers have attended it, but it's still not large enough in a country like India. So I think what you're saying has to happen much more, and this kind of a dissemination. And we find that, as you do some of these assessments, teachers can then, they understand that, yeah, we have to do like this, we have to handle questions like this. They become more open to attending the workshops because they realize, oh yeah, this is interesting, I need to do this workshop. So partly it's happening, it needs to happen more, but hopefully it will happen because at least the first steps have been taken. Your second question was on PISA, but PISA already happened. See, last time PISA happened in Tamil Nadu and Himachal Pradesh. So Tamil Nadu children did PISA in Tamil, not in English. And similarly, Himachal, it was done in Hindi. So what happens with PISA is that a paper is set. It is initially set, in English. But then in every country that is participating, there is a partner agency. So last time the partner agency was NCERT. This time the partner agency was going to be CBSE, but it has been pulled out. So NCERT or CBSE is responsible for translating. So this time Navodaya Vidyalayas, Kendriya Vidyalayas and Chandigarh were supposed to participate. So because of that, they would have done the test in India in Hindi and English, because I think, these are the language. So whichever language the student is studying in, if in case Gujarat participates, they will do it in Gujarati. So that is not a problem. I think they are hesitant to do it for the whole country as a whole, because they also feel, like any other country, they feel that, like if you see China, when they participated, Shanghai participated, and Shanghai topped the thing. So every country, at least the large countries, they prefer to what they think. Even when we put Tamil Nadu and Himachal, the thinking was these are our 2 strongest states. They may have been wrong, because that's good from a inputs point of view. But so that was the reasoning. So they may not do all states, but they will. But whichever state they do, it will be in the language that they are in. And you're absolutely right. We'll talk about it a little later on. That reading is a challenge for children. It's a challenge with the way we are emphasizing. But both for PISA and for the real world, right? Thanks to our mobile phones and this kind of so much of information, that reading has to become really important. So we all say that yes, having a lot of things to read in the paper is what you need to develop as skills for later on. So this kind of a test, and you're right that it should not be only in 1 or 2 languages, but in all our states we need to do it. You asked about assessment capacities, and why ETS. So you talked about TCS, so I'll just explain that part of it. So basically so EI is an assessment agency. ETS is an assessment. There are a few others in India. You might have heard of Acer, which is also not Indian, it's Australian, but Acer is there. And there are 1 or 2 others. I don't know if you've heard of an organization called CSSL. They are an assessment agency. But there aren't too many other assessment agencies. Now what TCS does is, it's more of, as you know, they're a technology company. So they are very good at partnering and conducting these tests. Of course, they know about what we call item response theory and how, they did it with, for example, they conducted the test for the IIMs for some time. But TCS and Prometric are considered more, even Meritrack, these are considered more of agencies that conduct these assessments and set up the infrastructure and even do the analysis, but not so much the kind of creation of the assessment. They can create, but not with the depth of assessment research that an ETS or an EI or an ACER, and there's another agency in the US called AIR and so on. So I think we tell the government, and I think that is true, that as you do this more and more organizations will come up. In the Parak case, what happened was, in fact, we had also bid. So EI had partnered with an American agency called AIR and CSF, and then ETS was there and ACER was there, and ETS was the one that was finally selected. So technically, like we also qualified, they also qualified, but because our American partner was actually more expensive, AIR, which is American Institutes of Research. So that was the technical reason. But I think the point is that when these agencies come in, more capacity will get built in the country also. And places, people like TCS will also participate, but may not be in the core assessment part of the work. So overall, we think it's a good thing. In fact, we always say this, that if India, suppose tomorrow India says we want to do curriculum reform, we say, let's participate with the best in the world. Like if there's an agency in Korea that is really good in curriculum, let's participate. Automatically, Indian companies will develop the skills, and they should be able to compete. So in that sense, I think it's a fair thing. Any other comments or questions or responses? Yes, please. She'll just go to the mic here.
So I just wanted to understand, like you're saying, students studying in private schools, almost 50% of the country's children are in private schools. But the NEP is not taking private schools very seriously. Is there any reason for that, or is there any thought behind it, or what is it?
So, I mean, I think it's more of, I would say, maturity, right? Like, for example, the fact that today they are able to call a TCS and call an ETS and say that we will do it. Maybe they could not have done it 5-7 years back. People would say, why are you calling the Americans? We can do it ourselves, kind of a thing. So it's about maturity. Similarly, there is a feeling that private is bad. These people are out for profits. That kind of a thing. And the funny part is that's also possible. So the funny part is that, like, if you see politicians or bureaucrats or whatever, they like private schools, right? They will be sending, but politically they are not able to say, the NEP is not able to say that private schools are partners in the goal of achieving learning for all. So I can only call it maturity, and it's not political maturity, it's, I think, maturity as a country, where we all, like, we don't have any problem in, say railways or electricity. If I partner with a private, they don't say, oh, the private agency is making money. They say, as long as it's a fair process and the service they're providing is good, we will do it. And I'm sure there are reasons for it, right? I mean, there are bad players in the private space, maybe 5%, but then they say this thing happened and they were making money, and so we are not able to say that, both private and government schools are working together towards achieving this, and government will regulate in fair ways. And if the private school is helping children learn well, they will have more. I'll talk a little bit later about Dubai and how they work with private partners, where they say that if you're doing a really good job, we'll give you more flexibility, more power, more this thing. If you're not, we will control you, we will restrict you, we will this thing. So that is the only reason. But if you see the trajectory, I think it's getting there. So for example, when we are working with the CBSE, like, they're very, very open to inputs. They're very open. They openly say that, we give questions and then they have their experts who approve it. But the CBSE chairman said, do we have experts who can really comment on their questions and this thing? So of course they still have to do it, but they also realize that, and they're very open to that. And I'll show you some examples of that also. So we think it's a journey. It's in the right direction. And it's also true that private schools can't solve the education problems of the country, right? So there are some people who believe that, okay, that will solve everything. So I think that balance is something that we are gradually achieving. Yeah. Okay. One more question and then I'll move on.
Yeah. Let's imagine a triangle and the three corners. One is curriculum, one is assessment, and one is the actual, because we are all talking about the 21st century skills.
Yes.
Now, if we talk about the 4 C's, the critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, and collaboration, and then you take it up to assessment,
Right.
especially because you were talking of CBSE questions, and I talk of the board exam pattern, 10th and 12th.
Yes.
Where does it all link together? The curriculum is assessment driven. At one point, all the pedagogical approaches and all the skills and all the competencies we can only talk about maybe till class 8th, but in class 9th, when it gets more serious, because then it doesn't become curriculum driven, it becomes assessment driven. So are we anticipating any changes in the board pattern of questions? And I don't think NEP talks explicitly about that. So when you are saying that you are in a conversation with the chairman of the CBSE, do you comment on the kind of questions they are still giving, which are largely based on cramming?
Yeah. So first of all, it's not true the NEP does not talk about that. The NEP talks quite directly about it, says our questions have to change. We have to move from rote learning, we have to, so I think frankly, so the CBSE, there are individuals in CBSE who might have always wanted to make these changes, but without the NEP saying it like this, they could not have initiated the process. So there is no doubt that the NEP is very explicit when it says that, our assessments have to change. They are currently assessing rote. They have to assess core capacities, understanding, and so on. So I think that is also there. And taking support of that, the CBSE and all have been making some of these changes. We'll talk about it because I have a slide on 21st century skills and so on. It's a kind of a chicken and egg, right? So the CBSE will say that, we want to make it general. We want students to be able to pick whatever subjects they want and so on. But then this capacity has to get built in schools, and so for example, they say that we don't want to have this stream-based approach where if you're doing arts, you can't do computer science. If you're doing this, but so while they are supportive of it, that's not, there has to be training, there has to be infrastructure created to get there. So I think the intent again is to move there. There is talk about a range of skills, including skills like coding and so on. The idea of a test like SAFL is to allow the testing to be a little more broad-based and to kind of break this thing of, okay, board exam years, 9th to 12th, this kind of pattern and so on. We'll talk a little about that because that's really the theme of some of the changes. But yeah, thank you for asking that. Yeah. Yes.
I just have one doubt. By the time we implement this and, relish the success of this, would AI take over and we would have to wrap this all up and start a new curriculum altogether?
No, sorry, just this will, yeah, can you just rephrase that or?
I mean, with technology moving so fast,
yes.
There's already, fears and vision that AI will do half the work for us.
AI,
so should we train our children towards that?
Yeah.
Or should we continue with our reading and writing skills? Should computer
that's
science take
that's
over?
an easy one. I mean, please continue with the reading and writing skills because like we are seeing that, yeah, I mean, otherwise they will not be able to even use that AI. So,
today, I mean, my children come to me, Mama, can you write this for me? And just the other day, there was an app where the whole thing was written out by AI. So where am I now?
Correct. So this is a very good point, right? Like because now computers can read and calculate are there, do children need to learn multiplication? But there are enough studies that show that your brain development, so the reason you learn reading is not because a computer cannot read it out to you or a computer cannot do that, but because your thinking ability even in other areas develops only when these fundamental skills are developed in you. So I think that is the easy part. No, it's I think in general it is, I would say that, see, we are at that chat GPT hype cycle, right? So I think in my last, so there was some presentation we did and then the same presentation, Sahodaya presentation we did 1 month later. So it was the same presentation, but in between this chat GPT had come. So I said, look, in 1 month, like so much has changed. Now people are saying, okay, chat GPTs can write your answers. It's doing better than students on, college admission tests in the US also. It will be true here also and so on. But I think to some extent this is becoming a little overhyped. So like if you look at, I have done this, right? You check for a lot of the ChatGPT responses, you will find that they sound very correct, but when you actually start reading it, many of them have factual errors, significant factual errors at times. So which makes it, why you cannot rely on it, which is why Google search will give you 10 sites and then says, now you please look at the sites and see what is working for you. So partly I think we are at the cycle where it appears that ChatGPT is perfect, but the issues are also going to come out. That does not mean that it's not going to be fundamentally a very fun, it's going to change things a lot. Like again, this whole point on rote learning, the more and more rote questions you ask, yes, people can copy and give very good answers from ChatGPT, better than maybe what the teacher can answer. But the moment you have questions where they have to present arguments, where they have to explain their thinking, where they have to solve a problem creatively, ChatGPT is not yet able to do those kind of things. We put asset questions in ChatGPT and you will see the answers. It is not able to, I don't know if you know this question, it's a very simple question. It says Ravi's mother has 3 other children. Okay, Sushma, Gopal and this. What are the names of the children, right? Now ChatGPT, and I have this whole discussion because there was a message which showed that, it kind of got it quickly. The question is, what are the 4 children? So it says Sushma, Gopal and this. It says, who is the 4th child? The data is not there. Okay, what is the name of Gopal's brother? So it does not connect that Ravi is the 4th child. I have that whole exchange, you ask again and again because, so those are the kind of limitations also, but that does not mean that, if in case children are just able to do mechanically, yes, they are going to face a challenge from AI. So I think the answer is that I still believe that AI will enrich our world, but we have to enrich our education for that. So our people, our students are like one level ahead of AI. There's also a quote by Yuval Noah Harari, maybe 2-3 slides from now, which talks about a very similar point. So, yeah. So I'll move on. We'll pause again for questions. So with this, we will, the question, the title of this session is, why is the NEP saying these things? Like, is it just somebody thought of it and put it? Suppose the NEP was not saying this, then what should we do? And the basic point is that whether the NEP said it or not, this has to happen. We have to do these things. And the reason is this, right? So this is Yuval Noah Harari's writing in 2018, and in 2018 it looked futuristic, and today in 2023 we have gone beyond what he said. So what he has written is, he says that Bangalore, and I took it because it's also relevant to India. So he says that millions of people in India today or in Bangalore today, they kind of are operating as the back office of multinationals and so on. So if you are a bank, if you're an individual in the US and you call your bank, say a Bank of America, you will be connected to a person who will say, or at least in 2018 you would be connected to a person who would say, good morning, what is it you want? And he will say, I want to transfer money from this account, or I want this thing, and he'll say, sure sir, and he'll do something and it will get done. Actually this guy is sitting in Bangalore, he has a screen in front of him, he knows your thing, he's also working in the night, so it's US time, and he's able to do this for you. And literally millions of people were working like this. Now what he says is, what is happening today, and it's already happened by now, is that nowadays when you call the bank, you don't get a person at all. It will say, can you describe in a few words what you want? And whatever you describe it in your own words, you just speak normally, the system understands and it does it, that's all. So what this person was doing, what literally millions of people were doing, now the AI software is able to do. And so what Yuval Noah Harari says is that, so what happens to all these guys who were employed, they were doing back-end work, they could read the screen and help, but they could not do coding or something like that. And now that job is not needed, right? The other example, for example, is conductors, right? We still have conductors in Indian buses, but most other places in the world, they don't, because the job of physically seeing you and giving the ticket has gone away. And in the US, they are worried that drivers are going to go away because you are able to automate self-driving trucks and so on. Even if not the car, in the roads, in the highways, they are able to automate it. And if conductors and drivers go away in any economy, like that's a huge number of people who will become unemployed. And what Harari says is, and the last paragraph, he says, some emerging economies, including India, might advance fast enough to join the winning team. So, winning team, he says, is that the guys who are creating this AI software, they are the winning team. All the money that the bank was paying to this office of maybe 1,000, 2,000 staff in Bangalore, they will now pay less, but they will pay it to the company whose software they buy. So that all the money that was coming to India is now going to go to some company in California, is what he says. Given enough time, the children or grandchildren of call center operators might well become the engineers and entrepreneurs who build and own the computers and 3D printers. But the time to make such a transition is running out. The skills that the guys who are going to do that coding and all that have to have different skills from the people who are running the back-end operator. Same way, like I know when we deal with low-income communities, right? They say, कुछ पढ़ाई नहीं किया है तो conductor बन जाएंगे. You know, like or driver ban jayenge. Like I don't need to know, though today even to be a driver you need to have a certain minimum education, but the logic was even if I have very basic skills, I can do that. But if that job goes away and the only job that remains requires you to have a certain level of skill, then the education system has to provide that. So that is the change that is happening in the system in terms of the expectation from education. And the same thing is shown in this graph. So in a kind of a little more scientific way, there is an actual study where they looked at the jobs available from 1960 to 2010. And they said, what kind of skills do these jobs require? And they divided the kind of skills into these 5 skills. So routine cognitive skills are like a secretary, you know, or a teller, a bank teller, the olden bank teller, right? The people, the human tellers. Both of which more or less don't exist today, right? Because those kind of routine cognitive tasks have been almost completely moved to either computers or ATMs and things like that. So, that is the routine cognitive. Then you have routine manual and non-routine manual, which are slight variations. So routine manual is like a factory worker, non-routine manual could be like a driver, right? Now all these 3 skills are becoming a smaller and smaller part of our jobs today, and wherever they exist they are getting automated. These are the ones that are easier to automate. Now what are the skills that are increasing in our jobs from 1960 to 2010? It is non-routine analytical and non-routine interpersonal. And non-routine analytical is programmers, financial analysts kind of a thing. And non-routine interpersonal is frankly teachers, is probably the biggest one, doctors, where apart from there's something in your work that requires you to work with other people. And those are the ones that are most difficult to automate. Of course, things like ChatGPT are coming close to at least a non-routine analytical. I don't think they are getting anywhere to what teachers can do actually in the class or doctors can do in terms of interacting with patients. But basically what they are saying is that in our real life, the component of these non-routine task skills is increasing and the routine and the manual things are reducing. But if you look at our education system, out of these 5, we focus mostly on the routine cognitive skill. And if that does not change, we are not really preparing people for those things. And so people anyway develop, right? Companies will do training or people will work extra. For example, you know, we talk about 21st century skills. So if you say collaborative problem solving, we are not doing collaborative problem solving in our courses. Of course, they still develop it, or some of them develop it. But if we have to really succeed and if more people need meaningful jobs, more people have to have the skill. It cannot be that, okay, we are not doing it, but some people who have to develop it. So this is the second reason, or this is the kind of data-based way of saying that if you carefully read the NEP, you will see that this is the underlying force when they say that our assessments cannot focus on facts, but they have to focus on core competencies and higher order skills. Basically they are saying that if you were to focus on facts, you can do a routine cognitive kind of training and test for facts. But if you have to develop non-routine interpersonal skills, they have to develop core competencies that they can use depending on the requirements of the situation. So basically what we are saying is that whether or not the NEP said it, the forces in the world outside are demanding this kind of change. And this is seen by the fact that countries across the world are making similar transformations. This is an example from UAE, that one is Vietnam, this one is Singapore. But across the world, assessments are changing from one. If you look at a test like PISA in 2003 and PISA in 2018, they have changed and increased the component of these skills. So they say, interpreting multiple perspectives on a topic. So if you take the Russia-Ukraine war, they will say, just an example, but they will say, okay, here is an editorial in the Russian paper, here is something that a Ukrainian leader said, and obviously they are saying different things, and you have to understand and interpret and write something on that. So these kind of questions have increased, or they were not there in the 2003 test and they are increased now because they are saying this is what is happening in terms of the kind of skills that children require. And when they are doing this, how do you measure whether it's working or not? And that is where many countries are using tests like PISA. So PISA has become a famous test. I don't know if you've heard of TIMSS, Trends in International Maths and Science Studies. So PISA is at class 10 level, TIMSS is at classes 4 and 8 level. What these do is, these conduct international assessments. Countries have to participate. So you can't, as a school, you can't participate. Incidentally, the head of PISA is currently in India because they are announcing something, and Gujarat has tied an MOU with them for something called PISA for schools. So he's in Ahmedabad also. So what they do is that one thing that, so the main purpose of PISA is not to rank countries, but it is interesting to see how countries are doing. So one of the things they say is, if you go back to 1980s or 1970s, the US was like number 1 in education. And almost everybody else was much lower. Nobody, Singapore, Korea, no one was there. Finland was not there. But then what has happened is many of these countries have come up. And now for the last 2 or 3 PISA rounds, it is actually Shanghai, and Shanghai in China that has consistently been number 1. But countries like Singapore, Estonia, Finland, Canada, so there are these 10, 15 countries that do well, and then even the US actually has fallen behind quite a bit. So it's not that the focus is not the ranking, but the question is, what are these countries doing? Some of these are not very rich countries, like Vietnam, I think, comes 14th or something. So there are some countries, Estonia is considered one of the poorest countries in EU, but it tops all the EU countries in PISA. So there's a lot of evidence to show that it's not just because of the money they put. It's not like some people say that, oh, the small countries might be doing well, but China really comes, if not number 1, because the whole of China does not participate, but 3 or 4 states of China participate, which you can imagine is larger than many countries like Indian states. And they also come in the 15th rank or something like that. So they are pretty high, even though they are a large country. So that, the question is, how do you do it? And this is directly related to development, incomes, the kind of jobs that you are able to get in the country, and so on. So it's also not theoretical that, okay, how does it really matter, kind of a thing. And you can see that also. You look at the top performing PISA countries, whether it is innovativeness, whether it is growth, you see that they are the ones who are doing well on those fronts also. So again, the point here is that the skills that we are developing in our children need to change to be in line with the kind of changes that are happening in the world of work. And so the other interesting thing about people like PISA is that, for example, there is a competency called global competencies, which means, it could be 3, 4 things. One is working with people from different cultures. Already they say in India you have an advantage because when you are in Orissa and you are working with people from South India or this, there's already some variety we are used to. But that's going to be even more because now in your work, and it's already happening, right? You're going to be on a Zoom call with someone from China, someone from Korea, someone who lives in the US but is originally from Africa. And that is one kind of global competency. The second, of course, is just working with teams all over the world. So your team member is in a different country working in a different time zone. So these are also kind of skills that we have to develop because it's a reality for India also. It's not very far from becoming a reality for most people in the country too. Now compared to this, So in this context of what we have discussed, remember that our papers are still very typical. All of these are board exam questions examples, and because they are board exam questions, in many schools the school exam questions also are exactly the same. And what does that mean? It means that if I give you any topic, like if I say, okay, square roots, you know that my question is going to be this or this or this or this. Mostly it has to be in these 3 or 4 things. If I say English letter writing, it's going to be something like this, and so on and so on. Now compared to this, what is the kind of assessments or questions that are being asked today in the assessments elsewhere in the world? And this is the kind of example. So this is an actual question from PISA. So it's a question in science, and the passage actually is bigger than this. It's slightly bigger than this. This is not the full question. So what is the question? It says that there are 2 slopes like this, but there are these students who come there and they find that there are more trees on one slope than the other slope. And then they provide some data and they do look at the soil and all, and they say what could be the reason for this. One student says it could be this, something to do with precipitation and rain and so on. The other student says something else. According to the data, which student is correct, and explain your answer. Now 2 things, right? One, I think even when we look at it, we get a little intimidated. We say, hey, this is the same kids studying the same kind of topics that we are studying. If you see the curriculum all over the world, curriculum is not very different. It's not that they are learning about soil slopes or anything like that. Topics are the same. Age is the same. This is class 15-year-olds, which is class 10. So how do they tackle it? Now if you look at the data, you will find that maybe in Singapore 70% of children are solving it, and maybe in the other extreme, South Africa or someone who does poorly, only 10% are able to solve it. And all across there will be different countries at different performances. But like I said, curriculum is the same. Nobody is learning about soil and mountains as part of science curriculum. They are learning about the same things that they learn. It's more about the reasoning, like can you look at the data and reason and express it. In fact, our experience is if you try this with kids, like many kids get scared, they get like flabbergasted. They say, this we have not done, this we cannot do, this is not in the syllabus. And we find that one thing alone is a good predictor of will you answer it or not. If in case the child said, okay, let me try it, or I haven't done this but I can try it, the chance they're solving it goes up tremendously. So now the reason they do this is they say this is the world of today. The world is no longer the predictable world where the problem you are going to face the next day is similar to what you have done in the past. In fact, it's probably going to be very different, and COVID was an extreme example of this. I don't think we are, but frankly this AI and all is also, it's becoming as if the COVID situation was normal, and for whatever reason we are going to live in a world like that, where there is huge uncertainty, huge change, things changing a lot. People say that people will be changing careers every few years, not jobs but careers, because what you were doing is now either not so, like if you look at this whole social media thing or influencers, you can actually see that jobs have changed dramatically in a few years. So yeah, YouTube creator is a job that people do. So that is the reason that these, and it is the reason why our teachers and students have to be exposed to things like this. So what are those? So we identified 4 factors where maybe our children and our schools are not being so prepared, and these are the 4 that we found. The first is what we said, that when children see a question, they are used to answering it by what we call pattern recognition. This is similar to the question that our teacher solved, or this is similar to the question in my textbook, and we use that formula, and the question asks for this, and I'm going to use the same method here. That is one approach. Now clearly if you saw the earlier questions, yes, I can use that approach. Square root, yeah, this is the approach. And you pick up even today, though there are some changes happening, but even today most of your board exam questions are like that. But if you look at the slope question, I can't, even if I remember something the teacher said about slope, is probably not related to this question at all. So I have to understand the question, address it, in my mind say, oh, this is what is required, and solve it. So it's pattern recognition versus problem solving. So that is one difference. The second is reading issues. I think this already came up before. Like, when we conduct the asset test, this time also we did it, we go to schools and we take feedback. And one of the feedback we got is, we like the questions with cartoons and data and graphs and pictures. The ones with text, can you reduce that? So already we don't think the amount of data and reading in the asset paper is as much as the PISA paper, because we are also catering to the Indian system, though it is more than, say, a typical Indian test, but because there are passages and so on. But even that, the children and the teachers also say that if you can reduce the reading, it's good. So we say, no, we can't reduce the reading because you're going to have to read more and more in line with what is needed in both assessments as well as what is happening in our day-to-day life today. So reading is the second issue. The third is neither teachers nor children are familiar with the kind of assessments and questions being asked today. This is partly because of computer-based tests. So PISA, by the way, has moved to computer-based testing. You can't do it on paper. And in 2021 or 22, India had got special permission to do PISA on paper. So they said, we are going to give you the 2003 paper, because since then we have kind of been moving. So anyone who wanted to use paper, we were giving them the old paper, and all other countries are using only the computer test. Even a country like Vietnam that does not use computers in their schools would do PISA on the computer, and they would say that is quite easy. The tablet is there and the children can access it, they will get practice beforehand, and that has not been a problem. But we don't have this thing. But India said, no, we want to do it on paper, so they specially gave permission and they were going to use a paper-based test. But between a paper-based test, and we'll see some examples, and a computer-based test, some of these new kinds of questions are going to be there in the computer-based test, which is not going to be there in the paper test. And the last is conceptual understanding issues. And for that, we'll just see an example. Yeah. What do we mean by conceptual understanding? Like basic points. Like if you look at this question, this is a class 6 maths question, and this is a maths example, but there are examples like this in science, social studies, English. The example is that when you ask children to arrange these 4 weights from lightest to heaviest, right, what do we find? So the first 2 options are clearly wrong. 18% are answering it, maybe a little bit of carelessness or whatever. But if you see option C and D, C is the correct answer. So 1.25 is the smallest, then 2.15, then 2.5 and 5.1. But 43% think that 2.5 is less than 2.15. And net only 36% answer this correctly. But if you ask teachers in class 6 that, decimal comparisons to children know, they will say, yeah, it's not, and you ask them any normal question, it may even seem that they know it. But if you actually try this, you will find that this is, asset data. So it's private schools, English medium, leading private schools typically. So, and the graph actually shows this. It says, I'll just explain the graph. The horizontal axis is all the children in the class, with the brighter children, the children scoring more on the right side. So the ones closer to the 30 and 40 are the students who are stronger, and the ones, so 0 to 10 are the weaker children. So what you are seeing is that the children who are above the 50%, they kind of correctly say that they choose option C. So this one is option C. Whereas below that, most children seem to think, more children, right? If you see in the lower half of the class, almost all the children say that 2.15 is more than 2.5. Why do you think children say that 2.15 is more than 2.5? 2 digits, 15 is more than 5, or 215 is more than 25. Actually speaking, if this is done in a school, you can actually get the names of the children, who've said this, and it also shows it's a clear group, it's not random. It's not like, oh, randomly 50% are answering this. It says that the children, the beauty of it is that it shows that you can say it both ways, right? The children who are performing weaker have this conceptual gap. The children who have this conceptual gap are performing weaker, because they don't understand this, other things built on this. And if you remove this conceptual gap, you will see that their overall performance in maths increases. There are many such examples. or in science, and so on. So this is what we mean by conceptual learning maps. Yeah. So now what is CBSE doing about this? So CBSE is saying we need to move to a competency based education, and for that they are, we are also helping them with this. We think this is part of the answer. We think it has some merit. It's not the full answer. So they kind of break up the curriculum into curriculum expectation and key concepts, learning outcomes, content and domain specific learning outcomes, and competencies, right, which is what this table shows. And then they try to make questions related to those competencies. So in principle this is good. The only thing is that, like you saw in the previous example, the question is, just by doing this I can still continue to use bad questions, then this method will not work. But if I can do this and have questions which are carefully developed, which are actually testing for competencies, not just because I map it to that, that is what is needed. So this is good, but we have to go one step beyond this. Yeah. One of the good things that happened, I don't know if any of you were there in Baroda in November when the CBSE annual meet happened. So 900 principals from all over the country were there. It's the annual CBSE meeting. So one of the things that was happened in that thing was that, so from the time we started this project with the CBSE, they said, please give us examples of good questions focused on classes 10 and 12. So unlike ASSET, which is all multiple choice, most of these questions are not multiple choice. So then when this event was going to happen, they said fine. Then they took all these questions and we compiled it into these booklets. So there is they call it competency focused practice questions, and it's there for different subjects for class 10. The class 12 questions are also being added in the coming months. And there are many such questions. So the idea is that it can provide practice for children. The answers are also there and so on. And this is available on the CBSE website under manuals. For some reason it's not under competency. It should be under competency based education resources, but it's under manuals. And we are trying to see how we can also provide physical copies to people who want it. So maybe printing and couriering charges, but no, the document itself is free. So we are trying to do that. We think this is a good sign because now it is no longer talk, right? The moment you're putting out these questions, the booklet itself carries the EI logo and the CBSE logo. It's actually joined. I mean, we made the questions, but they also vet it and all that. So it's a joint effort. It's also a sign of seriousness that the moment you say I want to do all this, it's one thing, but the moment you say here are questions that you can expect of this type. So we think that it's a reason why some of these things will happen in the coming months and next 1 or 2 years. Yeah. The CBSE SAFL assessment also, if you see the principle and what they did, it's very, very similar to ASSET. Of course, the one difference is that, like in the case of ASSET, we have a special team that focuses on making the questions. In the case of SAFL, it's teachers making the questions. In fact, we have conducted workshops for them to, what are the principles of making good questions. But we always say that, it takes a few years to develop that skill, and it is good if the same teachers continue, which sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't happen. So SAFL is in principle the right thing. It's also a computer-based test. So it's a way of getting schools and children used to, using computers. I think in every country you're going to slowly have, so some countries like Estonia have started doing their school leaving exam on computers. It's quite complicated, even America and US and all, UK and all don't do it right now. But in the next coming years, that will also start happening. And this has some advantages, mainly speed, you get the results immediately, and children are using computers and other things, or they're using the mobile phone, so they don't find it so difficult. So SAFL is a kind of getting the system used to computer-based assessment. So that is happening. Of course, it's been delayed a bit, but the principles are very, very similar to ASSET, which is it is not a high-stakes test. It is not to give you a rank or a grade, but it's to give you feedback on where you're weak. But so the idea, we say that the heart of it is about good questions. If the questions are good, then the assessment becomes good. Yeah. By the way, the other thing in all this is that The NEP is very clear that all boards have to follow this. This is not only for the CBSE board. So both state governments and even the ICSE, right, like I said, when they reached out to us, it was because they said that we have to follow many of these principles also. So similar kinds of things are happening. The ICSE has started a little a few months later, but all of these similar kind of processes are going to be happening with the ICSE also. I wanted to give you one example before I close this section and just open up for a few questions of, so again, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the asset test that we do and many of you take is a mandated test for all Indian schools in Dubai and many of the UAE countries. So way back in 2012, so we have been doing asset there for more than 15 years. So 2006, 2007 we started. But around 2012, they said that we want to use tests to actually measure improvement of schools. And they said we want to make it compulsory. So if you are an American school, they have an American test. There's a test called the MAP, the NWEA MAP test. If you're an American school, MAP is compulsory for you. If you're a British school, something else is compulsory. Similarly, if you're an Indian school, asset is compulsory. If you're an IB school, you can do asset if you want or this if you want. And then using that test, we will see what is your improvement from year to year. So this is just, I'll go through some of these in detail in the next slide. But basically it started off around 2012 where, in Dubai you might think that oil is their greatest wealth or something like that. But they said the education of our people is the greatest wealth, and they actually have been making that change. They said we want to change from to an education-based economy. And tourism and the ability of our people and their skills and all this new architecture, they want those things to be, and for that they realized that education is critical. And Dubai also is a place where you have huge expatriates, so you have lots of Indians, many foreigners. I mean, you have Britishers, you have Americans. So if they want to improve, they have to have their schools improve. And you might be aware that most of these Indian schools in Dubai are CBSE and ICSE schools. The principals are people who have been principals here. So the same system, what is the change that they are making? And that is when in 2012 they contacted us and they said, we are going to select a few tests and we are going to mandate them for depending on the board of the country. And so far we have liked asset, but you'll also give us the reports in certain ways and so on. And that is what I'm going to show you one by one. So the process they use, this is the thing where it actually says Indian curriculum schools, asset, and you have to do it in these classes, and students in those classes have to take the test. So step one in their process was an evaluation by an external agency. So every school has to get assessed by one external agency once in a year. It's not optional. Once that happens, the second step is a school self-evaluation using both the results of the test and their own internal evaluation. And what you're actually seeing there on the top right is actually a written evaluation by the school, but the bottom one is where they've actually put together, in fact it says asset scores and then strong and weak skills in assets. So they look at the results and make a picture of where do they stand. The one on the top actually shows, we don't do this in India, but it actually says, what is my performance compared to other schools in Dubai? What is my performance compared to other schools in the UAE? What is my comparison against other schools internationally, meaning India and this thing. So each one of them they are seeing, and they're saying, okay, I'm doing well according to this, but I need to do better to go to that next level. So this kind of a thing the school has to make. And then the agency in Dubai, which is the KHDA, or there's something called SPA in Sharjah, they then inspect the school where they look at all these factors and they say, okay, where were you last year? What were your improvements? In fact, we do asset everywhere, but in Dubai and UAE, they asked us to give student-wise, where are they and what are their areas of, what does a school have to do to improve on those areas. So this is discussed in the inspection. And finally, this is something they do. Every school gets a grade which is public. Of course, it wasn't public in the beginning, so they told schools that 2 years from now it's going to become public. So this is what you have to do and so on. And from 2016 or so, this is public. So you get a grade like this. If your grade is weak, of course they support you, they don't penalize you, but things like adding students, increasing fees, you are allowed to do if you are doing well. And therefore, schools also take it very seriously, and we have been talking to schools. Like I said, these are all Indian school principals, many of whom we have known in India. We asked them this question. We said, is this good or is it too much pressure? Like we told them, you have done asset in India also. There you just took it and you used the results as you wanted. Here it's there, but it's compulsory and the state also is looking at it. What is better? And surprisingly, many of them said that is better, because they say this keeps the focus on improvement. And one thing that we have noticed very interestingly is that in the beginning, in 2007 and 8, Indian schools are performing better than the UAE schools in asset. Today it's reversed. Really surprised, but the other very interesting thing is that we have asset on paper and computers, so what we call asset dynamic, and schools can choose both. In the UAE they can't choose both, they have to take the computer based test. So it's 100% is on computer. In India we did 100% on computer during COVID, but we are back, we are now about 60% paper and 40% computer. Before that it was 80% paper. So again, moving to the computer thing actually has many advantages in terms of both the data and things like that. It's you get the results also immediately and so on, but here it's all completely technology based. It also helps them because all the international assessments are of that type. So yeah, so this is the overall steps that they take, and yeah, so with this I'm going to move to the next section. So again we can just discuss for 5 minutes, or I would love to hear your thoughts and responses. Like I said, this is more to share with you what we are seeing. Part of what we are seeing is because we think that some of these changes will start happening in India. But you can never be sure, right, what will actually happen. But we are seeing these trends, and some of the ideas that we see are good, we also share. By the way, we did a full workshop for both the CBSE and ICSE officials, where we shared not the same things, but similar best practices that we are seeing in other countries, which we think could be considered in India also. So, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I was just listening to you. We are moving towards computer-based your assessment. And on the other side, we all know that we have to focus on the reading abilities of the children and the writing abilities of the children. Reading, it's okay. We can continue, and because the moment you have computers-based assessment, so automatically this goes with the children that if we don't write, it is okay, because end of the day, all our assessment will be computer-based. So how we maintain, but we understand that writing, how do we maintain this balance?
Right. So just, I don't know if you take MindSpark English, so MindSpark English has something called a MindSpark writer, or earlier also we called it the essay writer. So when we say computers, it does not mean that writing has reduced even 1%. It just means, like if you see the amount that people are writing today, whether it's on WhatsApp or something like that. So the MindSpark essay writer, basically, in fact, we did a writing competition now, recently, just in December, where students have to write an essay on a topic, but write meaning they're actually typing it on the computer. And then either the teacher corrects it or our team corrects it, and you get the feedback and so on. So computers does not mean, you saw the pizza example I shared, that they have to write the answer at the end of it. So or for that matter, if you look at many other boards where, in some of the papers they will just have 4 essay type answers or even 2 essay type answers, that's it. It's not the whole, it's paper 2. Paper 2 is just 2 or 3 essay type answers. So computers does not mean that the writing is less, or it's all multiple choice or something like that. In fact, again, I'll show you some examples later on where you can actually ask children to manipulate something. You will say, okay, move the object to kind of show where the image will occur. So that is also possible. Multiple choice is also possible, but actual writing full length answers is also possible. Even our CARES product, right, what was detailed assessment earlier but now CARES, includes answers which children have to write. Of course, there we give an option. The option is you can write on paper, take a picture and upload it, or you can write on the computer itself. So gradually assessments are moving to a point where children write on the computer. The logic being, whether it's their email or their WhatsApp or their social media, they are anyway writing on it. and so they are comfortable with. So yeah, just to clarify that computers should not mean that they have to write less, and today assessments are available to provide that kind of support. In fact, the support to improve the writing and guided writing tools now are also available on computers. Yeah.
So should we move from ABCD to QWERT and from notebooks to keyboard?
So
The earlier the better.
yeah, I see, I don't like, for small children, definitely the fine motor skills. So just like we said, reading develops the brain, it's not just language abilities. In the same way, fine motor skills are very important, and writing helps with that also. But yeah, I think the reality today, if you look at us, for example, I don't know how much it is for you all. How much are you writing with pen and paper, and how much are you writing on computers? You will find that because it's a school, I think you still have a certain amount of physical paper and writing and so on. But if you go to a regular company today, we talked about a TCS or even a small company, you will find that almost all writing has also, like how much printers, right? Printers used to be an important thing in the past. Today, what do we need a printer for? I think only I need a printer when I have to put a label to stick on something to post. That's all, assuming it's not like I'm sending something, returning something, or buying something or returning something only. Because otherwise, if it's on email, I don't even need that. So to that extent, they also develop this as a skill. And definitely, like we said, writing, not just using the computer, but writing long form is needed. So I don't think we are moving away from ABC to QWERTY, but that's an additional skill that, they are normally learning also. It's not that we have to tell them or push them to do it. Yeah, that I think most of us don't know, right? I don't think most of us have learned typing that way. Yeah, I think, yeah, absolutely agree with you.
Father, you have questions?
Yeah, any other point? Shall I move on? Okay, yeah. Yeah, frankly, on the schools getting rated, even I don't know whether it's, I personally, I think that's not the most important piece, and it's it's that country, right? The way they work. Yeah, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying that it's not.
About rating, but it is about standardizing education as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is why we ask these people, right? So we ask these principals, and we have recorded videos of it. So we are going to share it. That is it a good thing? And they have they can say, if they want, they can say these steps are good. This is not good. Yeah. There are as of now, what we are hearing from them is yes, it increases pressure on us, but yes, it's a good thing. It's a better thing. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, as we are living in an uncertain world, we have discussed also that after 10 years of time, we were not very sure what kind of skill set would be required. Of course, still we are preparing the children for doing something,
Moushumi.
Probably the problem solving skills we are developing in the children. Sir, in your presentation, you have mentioned knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values. These are the three major domains. Now, probably together, the sum of these three is leading to competences. Have we identified any specific competences which we would be requiring or we would be focusing upon to develop in our children?
Yeah, so I'm going to be talking in a few slides more about 21st century skills, which is one kind of competency that we have not done in the past because maybe you can say it was not required. So, the competencies of basically learning to read, being able to write well, having numeracy, those were always there and they continue. But there are these new competencies which are also coming about, and we asked the same question to ourselves, right? We started ASSET and EI in 2001, and that time we assessed for reading, for math, for science, scientific thinking, because we said those are the important things, social studies, Hindi. We said those are important. Now we are saying maybe there are other things also which are becoming important, and we are actually introducing some of those. So we will talk about that, and that is exactly what you said. It is the competencies and the 21st century skills and so on.
Thank you so much.
Time bata? If I go, it will take more. So you tell me a limit. Yeah. So 115. Very close. Yeah. So so what is change? Like suppose I am a school. So one of the messages from all this is that if we are a progressive school and we are building children, developing them for the 21st century and so on, the NEP is a good thing, but we don't have to restrict to that. We can be doing, and also we don't have to only do what we are being told by the boards. And some of these, and the other thing is the board is focusing on the board classes, whereas it's best to make these changes from the earlier classes because otherwise it's a shock for everyone, right? And you can't really make the changes. So what are some of those principles that we feel schools can do right from an early age? I think this will be obvious to most people in this group, but in many settings, even when we talk with CBSE, and it comes as a surprise to them, right? All that it says is that focus on key concepts and not peripheral facts. And this is an actual question, the one on top, it says, what were the name of Mussolini's parents? It's an actual board exam question. And why is it important to know the names of Mussolini's parents? It's there in the textbook, yes, but that doesn't make it important. That is an example of a peripheral fact. Could be a nice to know. Yeah, it's nice to know that, okay, his father was a, I don't know, farmer maybe. Okay, interesting. But irrelevant from an importance point of view. Pardon? Google, yeah. I mean, I put this question on ChatGPT and it answers immediately, obviously. So, whereas if you put the second question in ChatGPT, it will struggle a bit. Or it will answer something, but it's not actually a good answer. And that one says, read the two sources describing the impact of Mussolini's actions on World War II. How far do these two sources agree? Explain your answers using details of the sources. This, by the way, also indicates the reading thing, that there are these two sources that you have to read. Now, this is getting to the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is, what was the impact of Mussolini's actions on World War II and the world as a whole? And if children understand that, that is what we want. In fact, they may say, one child may write something very different from the other child. But as long as they have had a reasoning for it and it is correct, that means they are able to think and absorb, and that's what we were doing. So, now of course, even today in our schools, I think we have more questions like the former than the latter. So, how do we start training teachers to make that change? That is the question. The second thing, which in some ways is the most important thing for tomorrow's world, is what we call the unfamiliar questions. So, try to see that questions are unfamiliar either in framing or context. So, here is an example of an unfamiliar question. It says that if you take a picture with a regular camera, it looks like this. But there is something called an infrared camera. And if you take a picture with that, it will look like that. And what is interesting about it is that the colors represent temperatures. Now, most children may not know this. That's fine. This is information that they are getting. They also learned something new which is correct and which is very interesting. In fact, even with the infrared on the TV remote, you can do some of these interesting experiments. Okay. Then it says, now see the infrared picture of that pencil. And what do you think? It also says that, note the pencil's tip carefully. And it says, before the picture was taken, the pencil must have been what? Dipped in white thing, or sharpened, or something, or something. And the answer is that white shows it is hot, so the tip is hot, and yes, it must have been sharpened. Either they know from experience that when you sharpen, it gets hot, or they remember from theory that friction causes heat. So I'm combining friction and heat and infrared and reading, and I would argue it's interesting, and you can actually try it, with a thing and put a pencil and see if it actually is hotter at the edge, whether you touch it. But it's unfamiliar. This is the kind of question that children and even teachers will say, we have never done this before. And if it's not an acid school, they'll say it's out of the syllabus. If it's acid school, they're probably used to it. But this is the kind of thing, and there is not that much text. Actually, the original question had more text. I've cut it down a bit. But it is still not as much text as PISA thing. So first of all, the children are smaller. Secondly, you're preparing them for tests like PISA with more text. So unfamiliar questions. Here is a much simpler example of unfamiliar question. So here is a familiar question, right? What is the perimeter of this rectangle? And the familiar question, 78% of children have answered correctly. See the class here, I think this is class 6 maths. So 78% have answered this correctly. But the second question says, shown here are 3 shapes. Which of them has a perimeter? It's not even asking you to calculate it. Which of them has a perimeter? But just see the response. Only 19% answered it correctly. So only 19% understand perimeter, but 78% can do a calculation if you put it in a form that is, I would say, familiar or mechanical. So sometimes to test real learning, we have to use unfamiliar forms. Right? So this is the other example of the same thing. Yes, so now we have come to 21st century skills. So these are not hypothetical, right? I mean, I think maybe 10, 15 years back it felt like, okay, people are just talking about it. But today you can really see how each one of them is coming up as, we are talking of layoffs in tech companies. Who are the people who are getting laid off, not getting laid off? Of course, it's a much more complicated process than that. But in general, some of these skills matter. Are you able to work together in these kind of diverse groups? Are you able to do data analysis even though your job may not be a data analyst job? I know people who are doing research on cancer, but they are not biologists. They are computer scientists because a lot of cancer research is about maths and computer science these days. So it's a lot of working across the skill sets to make things happen. And of course the challenge, I don't think people have solved it completely. It is how do I assess for each of these? And there is work happening on each one of them. And I'll talk about one of them, which is Asset has just introduced, I don't know if you've seen it, but starting this winter round, starting December 2022, we started the Asset computational thinking test. And we call it computational thinking and not coding because it is computational thinking. It is the base for coding. Like the 21st century skills, computational thinking is these 4 skills. It's like computational thinking can be understood as a way to systematically solve problems. And these are some of the ways that you solve problems, by decomposing it into a smaller problem, by understanding algorithms, by abstraction, and by using pattern recognition. So we also clarify that computational thinking is needed by everyone, including doctors and engineers, whereas coding might be needed only by someone who is actually coding. So coding is a subset of this. Yes, one of the best ways to test advanced computational thinking skills is by coding, but basic skills can be done even with normal kind of questions, which is what the paper has. Incidentally, Amazon has a program worldwide called the Future Engineer Program across the world, where their focus is to focus on developing coding skills in girls in disadvantaged parts across the world. So in India, they have partnered with us, and we work in Telangana. And of course, we told them that before they learn coding, they have to learn reading and language and math, which is very weak in some of these rural areas. So they use MindSpark, where they do language and maths in Telugu. But they also do computational thinking, which we actually use a method called unplugged. That means you do it through worksheets. So for that, they don't need computers. But of course, once they learn the basics, they will. So that's also computational thinking. And some of the questions we ask in these, and that there it's not an assessment. In Asset, it's an assessment. But this is one example. Like computational thinking, we are going to add Asset data analytics, because that's the other skill that everybody is going to need, whether they are a teacher or a doctor or this thing. So these are examples of computational thinking. Of course, we are focusing on the assessment side of it. There is also work with teachers on how do you develop this, and so on. So there are trainings available for those. Some of those we can help with, but as these become more mainstream, you will find more of this happening. Right? The other test that we introduced this year, again this is something that came from the Middle East, was reading assessment. So while we have Asset language, there is also a special reading test which has audio based. Again, it has to be a computer based test. So you will have audio based questions where you have to listen. There are questions on phonics, the questions on initial sound, phonemic awareness, and so on. So Asset has added these 2 tests and will be adding more tests as we go along in the next 2-3 years. Yeah. Now, why do you need computers for, or how can you use computers for assessments? Now, this is an example of a video which shows that. So this is a, you have to simplify this. Now what happens is children make mistakes while doing this. So one mistake they will make is that because of this minus and minus they will get confused. But the second mistake, which I don't know if everyone is aware of, is that they will multiply the 5 by 5m, but they will not multiply the 5 by the 3k, which is what this child has done. Opening the bracket mistake. Now, so depending on the mistake the child makes, so what you find here is, when the child makes a mistake, it says error in the term 3k, and then it gives a general example. It doesn't say this is a mistake you have done, 3k has to be 15k or something. No. It gives a general example saying, are you able to read it and understand? So you have to think again to get the correct step. And if you get the correct step, you get the answer correct. Now, I don't know if you're seeing the power of it. We've actually seen it from the data. It's like having a teacher sitting next to you. Of course, this is from MindSpark. This is not an assessment. This is the learning product. But it's like, because as you did it, wherever you go wrong, the system gives you feedback. And if you keep getting it wrong, it will give you more questions like this, but also give you feedback on this. And there's a different mode called a testing mode, where these hints will not come. There you have to just solve it. But most of the time, children can do it in the learning mode, and that is how they can learn. So the reason I'm showing this is that this is how technology can be used to teach. It's not just that, okay, my computer is like a screen and I just use it the way I would use paper. Imagine the only way you can do this in real life without computers is if a teacher were spending time with every child. So now the teacher can focus on the weakest child for whom this doesn't work, but this may work for 70-80% of the children. So this is what, if it's an asset dynamic test, it's what it would look like, where children can actually solve it and they may get different kinds of questions. And this was the other example I talked about. So these are not multiple choice questions. The first one has drop downs. The second one actually says that an image forms like this, like move the object so that the image forms at the red dot or something like that. It can also say explain your answer if you want. So all those things are possible. Yeah. Another example where, again, this is something you can't do if it's just paper. It says, what is the process being seen here? This is a time-lapse picture. So basically, the plants are moving towards the light, right? What we call phototropism. So you're asking a question on that, but with the child actually seeing it in a video, which you cannot do on paper. The example below is from English, where it says highlight all the action words in the paragraph below. So they can actually click on any word and select it. And if they get all the words correct, so you're kind of testing the thing by actually making them do that step. So these are not multiple choice questions. You can ask them to type an answer. You can ask them to do some manipulation like the first example. It's also a richer question. I mean, forget all the other things. The kind of feedback you can get is high. Sorry.
Is this a richer question, the fact thing, highlight all the action words?
Correct. I mean, what is the fact is that it's more flexible, right? Than if you gave them a set of options and said this is the thing, you're restricting them to those 4 options. Here, if a child thinks that large is a verb or thin is a verb or dog is a verb, they can pick anything they want. And you are getting to see those kind of errors, which you will not get if you ask this. In that way, it's a richer question.
Yes, I was thinking in terms of a computer-based question. This we give you on full pen and paper.
Yes, that is true. So the advantage of computer-based in all these examples is that, see, if you are asking the child to write an essay, then after the child writes the essay on the computer, the teacher has to correct it anyway. I wouldn't today, though some people will claim that the computer can correct it, an essay I would still have the teacher correct. But this question, the computer can actually correct. So the computer can tell you that most of your children are getting this correct, but there are some children who think that has is a verb or this dog is a verb or something like that. So in that sense, the teacher's time gets saved, because in the other case, you have to correct each one of them by yourself. So it's not in that sense a richer question, but it can kind of get all the errors they are making and give you a summary of that. Some more examples. The one on the right is the data analytics kind of question. Again, it may look intimidating in the beginning, but it's actually quite this thing. It says, here is the data. In what form can you express it to show some kind of a thing? This other one is, it's the same. It's like Venn diagram, right? This also we can ask on paper. Shade A intersection B. But again, the computer can correct it and tell you what are the patterns of errors they are finding. maybe children are mixing A intersection B and A union B. It can also connect and say the children who are making this error are making this other kind of error also. And also I would say children find this a little more interesting because they can play around with it, they can kind of understand it for themselves. Many children have said, many children have said that the feedback that comes immediately from the computer is less threatening when the teacher says you got it wrong. So that also helps them to learn. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, basically it is going to aid our work. It is not like we cannot give the richer question or that, but only the medium is helping us. It will help us, it will save our time. Yeah. Okay, so we cannot just say that it will enrich, but it is basically making our work easier. So many of the teachers may get help from that.
Yeah.
That part. But the creative aspect, I think we have to still leave it to the teachers or the human mind.
Correct.
I think
I
that
would
we
say
have
that
to
the most important part, the richest parts will be with the human mind. Again, coming back to that graph where we saw interpersonal skills, So I think that's a very important point. Like what the computer can do is that there are things like, I sometimes look at it like a CT scan machine that a doctor uses, right? The doctor cannot do what the CT scan machine does. The way it gives you an insight into, okay, what is the problem or a cancerous growth or something. But the CT scan machine is, no one will ever, if you say CT scan machine is a doctor, people will laugh. The skill of the doctor, the role of the doctor is far higher than the CT scan machine. But in one way, the CT scan machine can give you more insight than if I did not have a CT. It's not like if I am a good doctor, I don't need a CT. Some people say that. They say, oh, you're doing all this because teachers are not doing what they should be doing. So it's not like a good doctor does not need a CT scan machine and a CT scan machine only for a bad doctor. No, it's giving you insight in a certain way. The previous one I showed you with the algebra solving, it's like amazing because the moment 1,000 children answer it, we can write a program and see what are the common mistakes. We can do it with multiple choice also. There you can say C, they are getting wrong. But here you are actually seeing what is the mistake they are making, almost like they were writing. And you tell the teacher and they focus on that. So it is giving an insight that you could not have got because you cannot analyze 1,000 students' answers. But the computer cannot do what the teacher can do, both in terms of creativity, but also in terms of the human touch. Like that human touch part is very, very important. Like children eventually will not connect with or even with computers. So I think that's where the synergy comes in. Please raise your hand if you agree, disagree. This is another very interesting point that we have seen from international boards, which is the use of projects. Typically this could be at grade 7, 8, 9 or 10. Now the problem with projects is often projects get converted into chart paper showing something, that's it. Or parents do the project work. So the question is, how can you do a project in which children are doing something creative on their own and it is not something which is done mechanically. And some people say that, oh, projects are okay in fancy schools. So that's why this is an example of an actual project on Chembur slums. Or we have seen in Delhi slums people doing, what is the water usage. We looked at the community and we went to 20 houses and we measured their daily water usage by talking to them. And they did it creatively and this thing. So the thing in this is, again, this is related to the 21st century skills. And when you do a project like this and present it usually in a group, again, your maths gets done, science gets done, language gets done. And what we are working with the boards on is how do you give guidelines? That's what other boards have done well. How do you ensure parents not doing it and it's not just chart paper and they do original work? It's the guidelines and the templates. And maybe 100% won't follow it. Maybe in spite of all the guidelines, 30% will just do chart work or the parents may do it. But you find that a lot of people also follow those guidelines. And so that's another powerful idea for developing the kind of skills that the NEP is talking about. And these are what we call stimulus or case-based questions, where you have some stimulus or some information and then the question. This is an actual question either from PISA or TIMSS, and it basically says, so the question shows you the map of Antarctica and it says estimate the area using the scale. So it's a complete, the other thing that's happening these days is the cross subject or cross curricular linkages. So this is a classic example of geography plus maths. Unless you know the scale, you can't estimate it. Show your working out and explain how you made your estimate. You can draw over the map if it helps you with your estimation. So this is one example. The second one is an example from ASSET, where it says that this is the way a seismograph functions. So again, we've had teachers come and tell us, this was some years ago. So they said seismograph is not in our course, we don't do it. But that's not the point. You don't have to have seismograph in your course. Once you understand that, and you can see it's even made with less reading. The same question in PISA, there'd probably be more reading. But it basically says, here are the graphs, how long did the earthquake last? So again, I would say a combination of interest, different context, but graph reading, understanding the thing is what you're trying to achieve through this. Yeah. So yeah, should we just stop, wait for one or two questions or comments? I mean, or anything that you agree with, disagree with?
Okay, so nobody agrees or nobody disagrees. Thank God. Thank God.
Sir, thank you so much. So as we discussed about the 21st century skills, so in 21st century skills, we were having creativity also as one of the skills which we were discussing also. I wanted to share few days back, I attended one of the beautiful seminar, and probably I partly agree with that. So there a lot of discussions have happened that AI is so dominating these days that within probably months or years, it depends on country and country, and implementation also, that creativity also will be taken away. So when creativity is being taken away, it means the skill which we are proposing in the 21st century, I think those skills, I'm not very pretty sure, because AI is going to take away your critical thinking as well, because you're asking everything. Nowadays, if you see, people, they stop using their mind also. They're not even applying how to resolve a problem. Straight away, they go to the Google, put the problem also in the Google and try to seek answers. So critical thinking, in biology, we use the word endangered. I am also finding that into that zone. Similarly, creativity, because if you see PowerPoint presentation, there also, if you see nowadays, a tool has come, graphics, everything. You just select that, automatically what your own artistic skills are there, your skills gets enhanced. So where are we landing to? So I'm having a doubt.
Yeah, no, excellent question. So see, at some level, like sometimes we use an analogy, which is that there's a child and they are trying to write on a board, let's say. And the child has to stretch because the board is high and he's able to reach only this much, right? Now, the learning in a way is in the stretching. Okay, so this is step one. Now, step two, you give the child a stool. Now, the child stands on the stool so he can go much higher. Earlier, he could not go higher. Without stretching, he can easily reach the point where he reaches now. But again, the learning is only in the stretching. So what the stool is really helping him do is reach higher. Not that, oh, I could reach here, now I can reach here without stretching. Sure, he can do that, but then he's not going to learn, right? So that is what we think AI is doing, or all these tools are doing. It's like saying, see, the art of writing on stone tablets has been lost by us, which our ancient humans could do.
We were able to recall much more, our recalling ability. Now, how many phone numbers we can recall nowadays?
But that's what I said, no?
So
earlier we could.
Our abilities are also, because I feel some required abilities we should be having, we are depending a lot. Of course, I feel this is the need of the hour and we are turning a lot. I just wanted to share one instance which is happening probably in our school, and I am not very sure what is the status of other school. Like, we implemented tab in our school, which is compulsory for the children. For example, we are not having school diary, in our school. So children, they get everything through the tab. So every, like the kind of instructions we are sharing over here, computer-based, scenario we are having. But what happens is, we use these things for the productive purposes. Of course, this is very, very productive, very innovative and creative also. And of course, bringing a lot of, reducing the workload of teachers, as well as making students understand and identify the weak areas, go to the next level. But challenge comes up is the students, they will not use this. They will go to the other areas because wherever you are using this kind of technology, you are also using internet. Without internet, you are not able to use. The moment student they are having the internet, you know, keeping a tab on them is very tough. They are much, much smarter. Within fraction of second, they show you a different world. So, and the kind of habits they should be developing, they are moving away. And I also wanted to share one recent study which has happened in our school itself. We were having an iCam. You know, what happens? Majority, let's say in a class we are having 30 students. Out of 30 students, 29 students have been found to be having low vision. Imagine. Standard 1 student, 29 out of 30, they are having low vision. And then I and doctor, we were discussing where these gaps are coming in, how this ratio is turning too high.
Yeah.
Again, you know, we are of course having positive sides,
Correct.
but I think this positive should go only if we are able to balance and minimize those negative aspects also.
Yeah.
Because health is getting impacted. Now children, one of the skill we have also discussed about socio-emotional skill, they are getting, you know, used to these and that is getting underrated.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think I would agree with that. I think there are two parts to this. There is a positive and a negative, right? If you ask people in the world, and there have been surveys on this, right? You ask them that has creativity increased or reduced, human creativity increased or reduced in the last 10 years or 20 years, you know, when we have had these technology tools. And as a universal agreement that they will say it has increased, not reduced. I think it's that stretching example that, you know, you have that creativity, you have the critical thinking, but that doesn't mean that you are now doing less. It means you can build on that. Now, does that mean there aren't dangers? No. Does that mean that many people will say, okay, the creativity is being done by the computer, I'll just copy it? Yes, they do that. Does that mean that people will not like use it carelessly so that health suffers? And are we seeing health suffering? Absolutely. You know, whether it is mental health or stress or lack of socio-emotional thing or eye problems like you said. And that is where education and curriculum come in, which is that exactly what you're doing. So you are identifying that, excuse me, this is causing an eye, and maybe we don't realize it the first time. So now we kind of create control of that. Okay, now children are not writing because they are all thinking that they don't have to write. So how do I have, I'm not going to remove computers, I cannot remove computers. How do I make sure that writing is there in spite of the computer? And fortunately others are also thinking of this, others are also doing this. So it's like there are a number of these ideas available where you identify that, okay, this skill is probably getting missed, so we have to do it, we have to keep the thing, and I think that is the answer there. Yeah.
Just two things for what you said, ma'am, like a rejoinder. You said that AI, we are threatened by AI, will take over our creativity and critical thinking. And the second thing you said is that when the children are given tabs, they might, you know, there will be a temptation to go to social media and all. So one answer, ma'am. When we talk of the 21st century skills, we talk also of collaboration. Now here in this room, if I give or if sir gives us a task, not individual but group wise, we'll all get down to solving it, help each other. But if you give individual tasks, yes, we might be tempted to Google it, or I might be bored with it and go for social media. So the key for the 21st century skills is within the 21st century skills only. If you give us collaborative tasks, if we give our students collaborative tasks, if there is one tab and 4 students, I promise you they will not go to social media. Secondly, AI cannot determine that kind of creativity. If we give a lot of challenging questions, nobody will go to social media. AI will not determine that this is the kind of challenging question I should give so that the children are not tempted. So some human values are never going to change. We are competitive and we would want that, like my group should be first. So I think there is the solution.
Ma'am, please use the mic. Yeah.
Yeah. The balance is the values, of course.
Yes.
We understand,
Yes.
but when it goes to the children, we have seen how children, they are smarter than even than the computer teacher.
Yeah.
Yes, they
You know,
are.
without even using internet, they're using proxy servers, and
Yes.
they go to an extent. They're
It's
much,
just
much
that
smarter.
we need to inspire them by giving them problems. that are, that have real life connects,
Yeah.
and
No,
the competition,
I think both,
that will be there.
both these points are
concern-
true. Both
Yes.
these points are true, which is that we cannot assume that these problems will not happen.
Right, right.
We have to anticipate them. And if we can anticipate them, there
Yes,
appears to be hope. I
exactly,
mean, we don't know the future. There appears to be hope that all of these can be of help and not of harm. Even at least as of today, like I said, the creativity example, that is happening. So yes, we have to stay alert and we have to do this.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go quickly
you.
because we are a little behind on time. And I'll just quickly run through these examples for your information, and depending on time, I can provide you more information or clarify. So what is the kind of work that we are doing? I have written CBSE, but now we have started creating. So with the ICSE, we are creating a teacher portal where we are going to provide questions and so they are kind of similar, but this is something that we've already done over the last 1.5 years with the CBSE. So So guidelines on, so partly this happened because this, that term exam in the middle of COVID, was an MCQ thing, but even as part of regular papers, there are multiple choice questions being made. In fact, we have now come up with a similar thing for the free response or the long answer questions, guidelines for that. I don't know if all of you are aware of the asset question a day, the AQAD. If you are not, you can just, even on your phone, if you just type aqad.in, you can just open it on your browser, you will get this. But now AQAD is also available through the CBSE website. So if you go to the CBSE website, one of the boxes there is AQAD. If you are a school that knows of this, you can just type aqad.in, that's also easy. But if you go to the CBSE website, you will find this. So CBSE wants to encourage this right from class 3, where children are answering these kind of, thinking based questions. And it is class wise, yes, class wise. You can, if you set class 6, it will give you a class 6 question every day. If you do, and even though you say class 6, you can go and see the class 8 question also. But if you are a child, you've registered for class 6, that's the question you can answer every day. So it's like this, every Monday you get a maths question, every Tuesday you get a science question, or like that. So there are 5 subjects. In fact, in EI you have social studies also. CBSE said don't do social studies, they're very scared of controversies, so they said just drop social studies. So with CBSE it is English, Math, Science and Hindi. We have social studies also. We also donated 10,000 asset questions along with the data, to the Diksha portal. So the advantage of the data is that, there's a question, okay, the question is good, but suppose you find that 55% of children are saying cyclone where the correct answer is, say, floods. Then that is useful for teachers also. And this is a pattern that if 55% of children in class 6 are doing it, your children also probably either have the misconception, or if they don't, it's good, it means you have taught them to this thing. So we always say the data is as important as the question. Without the data, you may say, fine, it's a good question. But when you say, okay, 75% answered this way, that makes it interesting. So the asset questions we donated, the third one, includes the actual data also. Then another thing that we came out with, you might be aware because we have seen many schools kind of work on this. So we came out with a document called Essential Concepts. Now again, this was prompted by COVID. So what happened in COVID was schools were having less time, schools were closed. So you have less time to cover the syllabus. So what we did was that right from class, I think 3 to 10, we took topic by topic and said, which are the topics that are really critical, maybe future subjects are future classes learning is dependent on it, and which ones you can safely drop or have the children do it themselves. So each of this is explained with question examples, why it can be dropped, and then the CBSE brought out a special circular saying please use it in this way. So this was a document we had made. Once they saw it, they said can we jointly release it. So now it's the EI CBSE Essential Concepts document. Then similarly, more of these kind of misconception posters. So there are various posters, more than 400 of these, where there's an actual question. Then how do the children answer it? What is the kind of mistake they are making? Some of you may know of the teacher sheets. So this is a kind of an advanced version of the teacher sheets, where misconception posters are released. And this again is kind of donated, available through the NCERT website. and also through us directly. So again, these are things that teachers can actually use in the class, and it's also for them to understand how children are thinking. We are continuously kind of providing these question examples, both for CBSE and ICSE. Some of these got released through the practice question booklet that I talked about, but others are being kept by them. They may use it for trainings, they may modify and use it in the assessments. So but the idea is to give lots of examples of how can you make these kind of questions, because we believe that initially it's difficult to kind of develop the skill, but as you keep working on it and more teachers become good at it, it's going to be easier to make this the way that all our teachers are both thinking and having questions. Nowadays, when the CBSE launches even this round of board, so the CBSE normally launches sample papers, but for the last 2 years they ask us to also launch a set of papers. I think they call them practice papers. So if you go, you will see it will say sample papers and it will say additional practice questions. So this is something that we are doing. You will see that those practice questions we are giving are a little more unconventional, unfamiliar. So the idea is to move towards those, like we comment on their papers, they comment on our papers. So the idea is to slowly move to those kind of questions. I think we talked about workshops. So we do a lot of workshops for them. Some of the workshops are done for question setters, which is very confidential and so on. So in fact, they keep the cameras off and the names are coded. So even we don't know who the question setters are. Some of them are done for teachers, which are the ones that get onto YouTube and so on. So we're doing a lot of these workshops. Even the learning frameworks that I'll talk about, when we are releasing the workshops, when we are releasing the learning frameworks, we are doing a webinar so teachers can understand what they are and how they are to be used. One of the things that we did is we analyzed board papers across about 7 different boards and countries. So what is the IB doing, what is the IGCSE doing, what is Singapore doing? So countries that are doing well and some of these boards that are considered good. What are the kind of questions they ask? So for example, the stimulus based questions. So we found that what is written here as caselet based questions. We found that some of these boards, all their questions are case based questions. They don't have like just standalone questions. Even the notion of having multiple papers, paper 1, paper 2, one paper is multiple choice, one paper is long answer. So we are just kind of studying and sharing all this information with the boards also. Not that, what is the percentage of marks they have for internal weightage exams and so on. So all of this analysis has also been very useful in making some decisions on what could be done going ahead. The assessment frameworks that I talked about, so these are, or now it's being called the learning frameworks. So this has already been released for class 10, which was done with by the Azim Premji University, but class 12, which is just getting released now. In the next few weeks, there will be a webinar and it will be released. So this is the kind of guidelines on what are the competencies based on which these assessments are being done. So I think with this, we can just again maybe just open it up for questions. I have a few slides which talk about, so maybe I'll just run through those. I won't take time. This is just a lot of information on, for those who don't know of EI, some of the recognition that EI has got internationally, right? So EI was featured on the cover story of The Economist magazine, where it talks about MindSpark, multiple times, in terms of how this has shown some of the highest learning gains across any international edtech product. So in fact, in this whole article, this is the only product. So normally magazines like Economist will not talk about a product, but this is the issue, and the issue was titled The Future of Learning. So this talks about MindSpark. Similarly, the World Bank has talked about the use of both the assessments, and so World Bank has itself been a partner for EI assessments. In fact, they have this program called STARS, like we're working with many states, but Nagaland, Madhya Pradesh are 2 states where we are working with the World Bank to bring about assessment reform. And they've also talked about MindSpark app. It says the MindSpark app uses millions of data points to figure out common mistakes and help children learn based on that. Harvard Business School has a case on MindSpark, and what is the best way to kind of use tools like MindSpark to reach out to have learning for children at scale. UNESCO has, they have a prize in education, and EI has reached the finals twice in 2 consecutive years. Similarly, the Gates Foundation, which talks about the use of MindSpark, and even in India, the MHRD has also now agreed that the best form of edtech. So earlier they have tried, where they will put videos of lessons and project that in the classroom, whereas now it has been understood that personalized adaptive learning, which means that you use computers basically to determine where the child is and give inputs based on the level of the child. That is the recommended mode of working, and now 2 or 3 states, Andhra Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, have started trying to do that by having the government itself will put in the computers, and have the other thing they would do in the past is they would just put the computers and ignore the software part of it, say any software is fine, whereas now they are saying that personalized adaptive software is the most important thing. So yeah, with this I am going to close. Yeah, and thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Moushumi.
Job in making the teachers competent, I believe so.
No, so it's a good point, but we want to actually demystify it, because I remember many years ago we once had a discussion with a senior government officer, and he said, this is what you're doing is good, but I want my teachers to develop this capability, and what can we do? So we said it's not difficult. There are just 3 or 4 things. So one, we said that this will not happen overnight. It may take 3 to 5 years for teachers to really become good at it. That is point number 1. Point number 2, we said the people who are working on it, they should continue to work on it and spending at least 40% of their time and focus on this, because what happens in government often is they switch, right? You go to another department, you're now doing something else in education. That may not work. And the third thing we said was pick up people who have an interest in this, some kind of so are they interested in kind of looking at these kind of things? It could be just interest in the subject, because you can't, again, they have their things that, okay, where they are excess, I will allot those people to it. That may not work. We said if you follow these 3 rules, it is not difficult to build this capacity. And I think it's much easier for schools to do it. So I would really emphasize that point, that it's all about giving a certain amount of time, giving exposure to these kind of questions, and organizations like we are very happy to share. A lot of what we are doing is basically to say that how do you kind of put that skill out there. When we started Asset in 2001, people told us that tests like PISA and TIMSS and all don't release their questions, right? So if you look at PISA, if they use 100 questions, only 30 they will release. The remaining 70 they won't release. But from the beginning we said, so they used to tell us that you should not release your asset questions, you should take back the question papers. But we always said that it's only by releasing the questions that teachers will get an idea. So we have always done that, and we found that works. Schools also say, okay, we are trying to get our teachers to make asset-like questions. So I really believe that it is possible, and I think we have improved a lot in this. Even with the CBSE, we find that, so we did an analysis of 2020 versus 2022 papers. And we found in certain subjects like English and economics and so on, the changes are much more significant. Unfortunately, in subjects like maths, it's still the old type, but there also we know it's going to change. They're worried that if they change it in maths, the performance will fall a lot, but they have to get over that and so on. But we do believe that it's not so difficult to develop the skill, it's more about working on it regularly. Yes, and we are doing that with the CBSE also. So in the next few months, most probably, depending on the CBSE schedule, so you will know that we used to do a question making competition. We did it 3 times in the past. So we are now, the CBSE is going to do, or we are going to do a question making competition with the CBSE. Obviously this time it's going to be, there'll be many more teachers and so on. So in fact the systems are getting built for that. So same thing there. So as the teachers make questions, they will get feedback, the best questions will get prizes and so on. So that's also with an intention of developing competency based skills, in teachers, yes. Yes.
Yeah, good afternoon all. So I have a small doubt only. I don't know whether others will agree with me or not. I am a teacher by choice, not by chance.
Great.
So it was my aim from the beginning that I will be a teacher. So that's why I have completed my certified teachers training course, my B.Ed course from Government of Odisha. And I was too much hopeful that I am very much confident with the teachings and all. But when I joined with private schools, like Kirtana school I have joined, so I saw that the schools are much more ahead with our methodology or teaching process, whatever we have taught in our training session. So do we think our syllabus of the teachers training should be changed or should be as per the new pattern of the education channel?
Yes, of course. I mean, even the B.Ed curriculum, you know, like we studied it many years ago, is very theoretical.
That methodology, pedagogy is not going to come into the action in the classroom only.
Yes.
We are facing a different challenge, new mindset of
Yes.
21st century students. So should we change the syllabus and also please guide on that? So that the government can change the syllabus, it will be as per the teacher, so that if the teacher will be smart enough to handle the classes, then the children or student will do well.
Yes. No, you're right. In fact, many people tell us this. See, when we present all this, they say that this should be taught in the B.Ed and in the teacher training courses. And we have tried it, you know, like before running EI, we had the school called Eklavya that we used to run. Eklavya had a teacher training campus. In that teacher training course, we did a 2-year course where the teachers had to, the trainees had to go to a school every alternate day. And all the people who went through those courses for 2-3 years, they are still in touch with us. Many of them are principals. And they say that we really learned because we were this thing. Now the government also has now been saying this. That's why they are extending the thing and they're saying we need to increase the amount of practice and so on. But it's been a difficult challenge to change the pre-service courses, especially in the states and so on. So I think it's a case of completely agree. It's just that when you try different things, you're finding that this kind of a thing where schools change is easier to do, and but that also has to happen. And it is, people are realizing it. I think it will happen gradually. Yeah. Thank you. I think it's taken a little more time than planned, but I'm going to hand it over to Moushumi, Priyanka. Yeah, Moushumi. Thank you, sir. Yeah, thanks.
What we generally do at EI, what are those that we come to you and eat your head up for, okay? And it'll be better if, people who are present here talk to you, but I mean, since we are short of time, I'll kind of run you through. And then, like I said at the beginning, there's just a small thanksgiving to a few friends of ours, and that's after which we all go out and have lunch together, right? So should we start? Okay, so we are this 22-year-old wonderful organization who has been working with research oriented programs for schools since a lot of you know already about this. And what first Shridhar sir, Sudhir sir actually made is called asset, right? There are people in this room who've done asset since 2005, right? And of course, they know all about what we do. But to the lot of people who are uninitiated here, it is a skill-based diagnostic assessment which means it's like a blood test, which, no, it does not actually, give you any pain. It's like a blood test, it's diagnostic in nature. It tells you where is the misconception, where is the learning gap, and, how do we overcome it. I had once asked Shridhar sir and Sudhir sir, schools don't give time. So if I have to go and tell them in 2 minutes, what should I tell them? So they told me, you should tell them that, it tells you where you are, where you need to go, and how you need to cross the road to take you from where you are to where you need to go. So to put it simply, it's diagnostic, it's skill-based, and it's a benchmarking assessment. Assessment because we don't believe in scores. Of course, scores have to be given, but what we do generally is actionable assistance. You see here, we have these, circular skill profile, which tells you about the main skills which are there for English, for maths, for science, etc. Right? It gives the child's main strengths, the main weaknesses, as well as a chart which will help the teacher to understand how to take this forward. It basically moves on the basis of test, target, and transform. From there on, we came to schools who told us, "Yeah, tum log ek baar test kyun karte ho? Why do you do only one test in the whole year? We teach so much during the whole year," right? So we came to the point where we started developing customized tests, customized assessments for schools, right? Based on their own, not only curriculum, but their own books, right? So we make these assessments based on your learning objectives, your learning outcomes, or the books, right, that you give us. You've already seen the kind of questions that we make. So, and that is called comprehensive assessment reports and evaluation for schools. Remember, the best part is that, you can do any kind of test, whether it is a class test, a unit test, a term test, whether it is for class 3 to class 10, all the basic subjects that we do, English, maths, science, social studies, is all covered. When it comes to ICSE, we break it down and it becomes English, maths, physics, chemistry, biology, history, civics, and geography. Right? Okay. Or after that, what happens is, let's look at the point of view of a teacher. She can customize what she wants. Most importantly, it doesn't have to be what I tell you to test. You are the teacher. You need the freedom. You are the boss who's going to say, okay, I have taught this, so I want this test to be like this. I want it to be of 20 marks. I want it to be of, a mix between MCQs and subjective. No, I want to do only MCQs, whichever. So the entire choice is yours. You can also decide whether you want to do this offline, you want to do this online, right? The most important part that remains is that one single word called remediation, right? Which we always speak of, but a lot of times gets missed. For the parents and for the students, this, the individualized report which we give. Imagine if a child is doing 12 tests and every test has an individualized report of the weaknesses, of the strengths, and even of the, practice questions as to where I went wrong as a child. Why did I take that, the incorrect, let's call it the incorrect option, and how can I move back and rethink, right? This is the teacher interface that you see, right? And when you look at this, it's so easy to operate. What we wanted to show you, since there's a little paucity of time, we'll show it to you from here. I mean, you go to tests, you look at which class, subject, what is the kind of test that you're going to take, and it will also show you and help you decide the calendar, and what is the name of the test that you're going to give. And of course, here it helps you decide upon all the topics which have been mapped from your books that we collected, right? Let's look at a teacher report. What does a teacher report give as gains from CARES? When you look at a teacher report, it shows you how many tests have been done, okay? When was this test done? Now suppose, I completed the topics maybe 2 weeks ago, and next week, I was not there in school, so I'm going to take it now. So this remains for records. And what did I take the test on? This is one of the reports that the teacher gets. It's a score distribution chart, which I generally call the score distribution bell jar. Very sweetly, it shows you the throw or the distribution of marks and how many children got which mark. Here you are. This is a bird's eye view. It tells you what kind of questions were there and how did we do in each of the breakup kinds of the questions. I mean, to say what is procedure knowledge-based questions. Now, suppose there were 10 questions given to you. How did you do on those? And how has your class done on understanding or application-based type questions? Yeah. Now, if you're a school leader, on your table you have 4 sections of each class. So you'll need to see how each section has done in each topic, right? So this will enable you to have a bird's eye view of every class and section based on the kind of questions that they have answered. This section is called to revise or not to revise. It's the most critical section that comes in the entire teacher report, and it's called the CRO pie graph or the CRO chart. You see there's a red section, there's a yellow and a green section. The red enables us to know the number of questions and the numbers of those questions where children could not answer correctly, right? The green says, well, this is recommended that you could also remediate, but the red tells you to remediate ASAP. And ladies and gentlemen, please understand that these reports come in 48 hours to enable you to effect the remediation at the earliest. When you look at this, this is a class discussion distribution chart which tells you which are the questions which each class or which each section should actually discuss about. Let's look at a question. Shridhar sir has shown you some questions. This is another question like the one that he said. Here you are. I mean, it says in solids, you have the particles which are inside are very close to each other, and something was done to a substance due to which, its particle went, which used to earlier look like this, and then they suddenly started looking like this. So the question is, what was done? Was it heated? Was the substance cooled? Was it broken, or was the substance pressed very hard? Let's see what happened. Well, the correct answer was the substance was heated, and instantly it will tell you how your class, how your children have done. See, your children, 53% of your children thought that it must have been broken. That is why the particles got scattered, or the particles scattered instead of being heated, right? So the moment we come to know about these conclusions, it becomes even more easier for, wonderful teachers of your institutions to start the remediation with the help of people who are at EI, who would come and brainstorm with your teachers and try and assist them in the remediation of the misconceptions. There is also answer and distractor explanation, because please understand that every MCQ has 4 answers, one of which is the correct one, and each of the other ones varies in degree to the correct answer. So what is the thinking pathway that it shows for each individual child, for each individual group of a class, and for each section as well? Remedial actions are also given. Here you are. This is a very, very important chart which shows you which were the topics which were tested, which were the correct options of each of the questions that were asked. The correct options are marked in green. And how have children done? Let's look at a simple thing like observations related to solubility in water. You see, children have done wonderfully, 100% answers, 100% correct and 100% correct. But look at this, only 18% correct. So as a teacher, I would take it upon myself to go back, discuss this question and try and remediate the concept that is behind this question itself. For the children also, vis-a-vis his section, we give a similar report showing how well have you done in the understanding or the procedure-based questions. How have you done in each of the subtopics that have been tested, which make up the entire question paper? And how have you done vis-a-vis your section? These are certain parts of the student report. Here you are. We call this the student's autonomy because this is totally personalized. Ladies and gentlemen, please understand that every child who has a different learning pathway or a pace would probably answer things differently. So my report will invariably vary when I compare it to your report, right? And maybe, I got 4 incorrect answers and you got only 2 from the set of the critical questions that were found for my class, for our class, right? And this is given for each child. And since child can go back home and redo the test, it is also, the option is also given for the child to make a note of why he wants to change his earlier answer, right? That option is also given here. You've also heard of MindSpark. MindSpark is, again, made through years and years and years of the research data that we collected from asset results. And we found that children were doing wonderfully well in mathematics. They were doing so well that out of 74 schools who took the PISA test, we came 73rd. Yeah. Sir, should I drop a pin? No, there seems like pin drop silence. Okay, so it's basically, personalized, adaptive, logic-based learning program. It is generally online. We had tried to do it offline also, but it's generally online. And the wonderful fact is the program adapts to the child. The child does not need to adapt to the program. That is the beauty of MindSpark. Okay, there's no threatening, nobody to hit you on the head and say, why you can't do simple maths. Okay, nothing of that sort. I mean, and even if you have as sweet a teacher as Annie ma'am, if you look at her once and you think you can't do this sum, then you start feeling very bad. It's better than, that you take hold of MindSpark and get it as a teacher for yourself. So, 20 years of scientific research, student learning, data points that we accumulated, and the pedagogy that went behind it. And today, of course, why did we do it? For this organization, for Shridhar sir, the bottom line is very simple. When I came in 2007, I also wondered how could a company like this have a vision which was so simple, creating a world where children everywhere are learning with understanding. Something very simple. Over these last 15 years that I have been at EI, I understood how difficult a thing it was to do. Right? You will understand because all of y'all are senior educators. You understand the efficacy of those very simple words. So MindSpark brings to you 20 years of research. It offers you understanding of each child's learning pace, learning pathway, right? It helps students to learn in a personalized way with their own methods. The most important thing is when I am able to do maths at my own pace, when I am able to do or learn English at my own pace or learn science at my own pace. That I think is the biggest advantage which MindSpark brings to all of us. We started with maths, then we came in with MindSpark English, and today we also have MindSpark Science. Right? One very important thing is MindSpark is driven by the teacher. It's not a program that drives the class or it says you must do this or you have to do it this way. MindSpark is driven by the teacher because it is she who teaches and then goes into the children with the activation and says, go ahead with MindSpark. It helps her get very critical reports on each individual child's learning path, right? And the beautiful way in which MindSpark teaches, you call it gamification, you call it adaptive logic, it inculcates everything in itself to give the best results. I'll talk to you about only one more thing. Of course, every child logs in through their own login IDs. Teachers take their own, own curriculum and it helps the teacher to actually complete the curriculum also in class. Imagine there were schools who've done MindSpark in very strange ways. The teacher, the maths teacher, okay, now suppose there are 10 concepts that you're going to teach in this year. So you've taught 7 and 3 were given to be taught by MindSpark, which MindSpark did effectively well and wonderfully well, right? So these are experiments which have happened, which have shown that MindSpark has been able to work as a co or an assistant teacher also. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to draw your attention to this slide. These are people who have evaluated us. These are people who've said, I think it was the year was 2012 when ID Insight evaluated us and they did this study in the US where it was seen that in 2 years for a student who uses MindSpark for 90 minutes a day and across 2 years, even if the child does it only for 30 minutes a day and maybe 2 days or 3 days in a week, in 2 years' time, there is a 22% rise in learning levels. I think that's wonderful. You know about JPAL, the Abdul Latif Jameel Poverty Action Lab. They have evaluated and most importantly, everybody here, whether it is the Harvard Business School or the UNESCO, where we've got 2 nominations year after year, consecutive years. I'm not saying and I'm not showing this slide to show you how wonderful we are. I'm only showing you this slide to impress upon you that we try. We try because we really want children everywhere to learn with understanding. Ladies and gentlemen, my lovely one-sided lecture has now finished. Okay. You can take out cares question paper. Yeah. Ma'am, you're looking at the report. Okay, I'll just show you. Didi, একবার দাও তো আমাকে দেখাই ও সবাইকে কেমন দেখতে লাগে। Yeah, this is what it looks like. This is what the question paper looks like. Please take a look. All of you have got it. And do tell us, while we prepare for wonderful things, please tell us in a minute, how are the questions? I thought we had to solve them. Ma'am, if you solve them, please write Moushumi beside it so that I can tell sir that I solved it. That's homework. Ma'am, is Sanjay sir there? Good that he's not heard it. Sanjeet? Are we ready? Check it. Just go around collecting some information and ask the ma'am, what do you feel? What do you feel? Then we start.
Ma'am, what do you feel about it?
Let me go through it.
Do you go through it, ma'am?
Getting back to the childhood.
Ma'am told getting back to childhood.
Okay, getting back to childhood. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Want to share something?
I'm just going.
I'd like to speak on behalf of Shridhar sir and thank you once again for coming. I would also say that it's always been fun. I have been coming, though I am from Kolkata and I work out of Kolkata, I have been coming to Bhubaneswar since 2009. And I am not going to really forget those meetings that I have had since then. So once again, thank you, Odisha. We're going to wind up today's show with a little bit of felicitation. And on behalf of all of you, I'd like to call upon Shridhar sir to say a big thank you for coming here. Shridhar sir, thank you for your time and for coming. Uttariyo. Come with me. Come, sir. Please. This was a request from their side. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
I'd request ACP sir to please come. Thank you, sir. Thank you for allowing us to be here today. And thank you for helping from the background. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. I'd also request Abhijan to please come up. You've been a very, very steady rock of Gibraltar. Thank you for your support. Thank you. I think I'm visible enough. Do you want me to use the mic or am I audible without the mic? Mic setting gola to. Okay. The person I'm going to call upon now, Shridhar sir. The person I'm going to call upon now does not need an introduction. Is the reason, one of the primary reasons why, we came to Odisha, and the moment I set my eyes upon her, I thought she's like a mom, but I'd never seen a stricter mom who could ask such difficult questions, in maths, in science, in English. And I really did not understand how to answer her questions. I would ask for water, and after 2-3 meetings, she decided whenever Moushumi is going to come, water is going to be there only. So she used to ensure that, and I had this wonderful habit of not taking her appointment and walking in just like that, no? So she knew, oh, you've come, okay. She knew that the next half an hour was gone. The amount of love, ladies and gentlemen, that I have got from her, I can never repay that. And you'll be very surprised to know, Shridhar sir should also know this, she taught me how to sell my own products. She taught me how linked detailed assessment and MindSpark were. And to her, I credit the development of detailed assessment, which we call CARES today, and MindSpark, both maths and science. Annie ma'am, if you could please come up. Come. I am not making a mistake. Please come. Shridhar sir, please come, ma'am. Thank you. Sir. Yeah, this is for you, ma'am. Thank you for teaching me detailed assessment, ma'am.
When I joined Mother's Public School in 2002 as an academic admin, I knew nothing about admin. How to go about it, what to do. I was a plain teacher before that. And it was only with the help of EI that I was able to understand learning, teaching, and the management process. They were really an assistance to me. The diagnosis that could be made with the question papers and understanding the learning problems of the children, and even the teachers' way of looking at chapters, concepts, questions, everything moved with EI. So I think I grew with EI. 22 years you talk of is my 22 years as well. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Because there's another elder sister of mine who has to rush today, I'll call upon her. But before I say that, sir, I have introduced her to you. She's one of those people who, would give me her tiffin box and say, I know you've not eaten your lunch, so please, while you are going to the other school, please eat. Okay? I've never got a scolding from her, but once she found out that I'm going to Koraput and the train would reach Koraput at about 2:30 at night, she was livid with anger. Why will you reach so late? Yeah, and that's how she told me. I told you not to take that evening train. I told you to take that morning train. Okay? I'm from Kolkata. Ladies and gentlemen, I have not received such love from anyone else. If it were not for you, Polly ma'am, we would not be here today. Please, please. Thank you so much. I'll hold this for you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everybody. Moushumi can actually talk a lot, but of course, from the beginning, I was scared of maths. So I always felt that children should be equipped well to do maths, calculate, which I'm poor till now. So maths is not my area. So always I wanted that children should do well. And when she came and Mindspark came, and I thought that this is it. And we were the first one in the country to start EI. So I'm very happy the journey we have been together, and we are also growing. So I'm happy for whatever the help Moushumi, Annie ma'am, of course, today you know that she was the one who could implement the program. Because for any program, I feel the people are important. Like Moushumi, actually, no, in Orissa, whatever is happening is just because of Moushumi running from one school to the other, and every corner she's there and trying to convince people. But actually, one should understand that this is really a good program. And children, earlier there was a Sparky also, and there was a competition. So children at home also, they were spending, we were giving them that half an hour, you must spend time doing Mindspark, and there was a competition, and children came up that we were doing when they're spending more hours on the computer instead of gaming, and they were doing Mindspark, and they were scoring, and they helped themselves actually. Nobody was tutoring them or nothing, but they grew in their own pace also. Because there it is not like grade 1 or grade 2 or grade 3, it was done with their own pace, children were growing. So that helped actually our children grow. So I feel I thank you for making this, and this we can, as a school, as a small school, we cannot have an R&D, which actually they are doing the research and coming up with programs like this, and DA, which is very, very important. This question answers and questions, and all this we come to know that what we are telling, the teachers are equipped and everything. And this DA also gives us a clear picture where we are. And with that, we progress skill-wise. So that also helped her. So, and we have been there for all these 22 years. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, ma'am. In 2010, ma'am had sent me to a very young gentleman. He was always in a white shirt, Then he used to wear a tie. Nowadays, he doesn't wear a tie. He has to go for a meeting. But on behalf of Sanjay sir, Priya ma'am, could you please accept? Thank you so much, ma'am. So, sir. This you will give me. Yeah, please pass it on.
Thank you on behalf of Sanjay sir and look forward to a long association.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. You keep it in a packet and give it to. Thank you.
There are two other gentlemen who could not come, but from quite far away, there is another pair of ladies who've come, who I am having to look like this at. Suparna ma'am, if you could please come. Ravindra Vidya Niketan is a school where Polly ma'am sent me in 2012. And they were only up and coming then. By the way, you should see their library and you should see their auditorium. I guarantee you, I haven't seen it in any of the states that I have worked in. Suparna ma'am, kindly help us in taking this for sir and Nandini ma'am.
Yes, please. Thank you, madam. I am taking this on behalf of Miss Nandini Mukherjee, who is the backbone of RVN. She is the backbone of RVN. She was supposed to join us. Because of some ill health, she could not join us. She is with us and her blessings are with us. She is the mentor of RVN. And also I am taking this on behalf of Mr. Saroj Patnaik, the vision behind RVN. I have just joined them to learn a little bit, if I could manage to, by being under the grace of such wonderful people. Thank you all. Thank you, EI.
Amitabh sir. Will request you to take the small felicitation on behalf of Sai International School, please. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sanjeev.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's really an honor to be receiving this award on behalf of Sai International School. I'd like to second what many of our fellow principals have already said. I think Moushumi ma'am has really driven the asset exam and the EI initiatives in Odisha in a very big way. And I'm heading the Sai International Residential School. I can tell you, they are absolutely fantastic people and they've been mentoring our teachers like nobody else has ever done. So I take this opportunity to thank you for all your endeavors, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, could we please break for lunch? Meanwhile, if you want to come in with your plates, please feel free because there's not much space outside. So if you want to come in and sit and eat, please, please. Sir? Yeah.
You brought in was very important, not only for the children but also for the teachers, to be able to think differently and make the learning more interesting for the children and make it. So that was, the questions and the idea of you coming in and training the teachers was something that was really what we would been looking for at Akshar since we started, because we had always said we always come with our own learning, but we must be learning all the time.
And it's a very popular program in our school. Popular in the sense that children love it, parents are very interested in it.